Hi, it's Joe Mazumdar of Exploration Insights. I'm at the January 2025 edition of the Metals Investment Forum in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm with President of Arras Minerals, Darren Klinck. Darren,
Great to be here. Thanks, Joe.
thank you very much. And Arras Minerals is a grassroots copper explorer in Kazakhstan, which I visited back in September. So I think the first thing people got to understand is because Canada and Kazakhstan don't really do much business, what is Kazakhstan?
Well, it's a big country with a small population, and in fact, to get there, of course, it's probably 180 degrees on the other side of Canada, but a lot of similarities, right? You got ninth biggest country in the world, heavy on resources, whether it be metals and mining, oil and gas, of course, a big part of the economies, agriculture as well. And for us, it's sandwiched in between, a couple of big neighbors. It sounds very similar to Canada, in fact, right? Same latitude as well. You get winters and obviously summers as well. And for us, really, we had identified it as an opportunity that we felt would be a go-to place looking for critical minerals in the coming years. And it was really on the back end of COVID when my partner and our CEO, Tim Barry, stumbled across an opportunity there. And then really over the last 3 years, we've really leveraged that now. We've got Teck as a partner on some of our ground. We'll talk about that. But we're seeing the majors arrive, right? And while Rio Tinto was there, prior to us and Fortescue, but now you're seeing Barrick come in, seen First Quantum come in. You've seen
And Teck's coming in independently as well.
Yeah, well,
as well with you.
Yeah, exactly. And so Teck's not only a shareholder, but they're also helping to fund an exploration alliance as well. And BHP explored 2 of the 6 candidates last year were in Kazakhstan. So I think ultimately groups are coming. They're getting really comfortable with the country. The government's been so supportive, and you're in a mining culture, right? You go to see the National Museum in Astana, and I think you've been there. You got a whole floor just on mining. So it's been great, and I think for Canadians that are over there, you've got a mining law that is largely based on Western Australia, Quebec, and Ontario. So we recognize that as well, and the government's been just so engaging. I think with industry, recognizing that our success is their success.
So what struck me as Kazakhstan when I was there is the size of the mines, and there's just not one type of mine. Outside of where we were staying, one of the largest coal mines in the world, and then farther away you've got a mine Boshakol, a 1 billion ton mine there. It's operating with Kaz Minerals. So there's no lack of large mines that are already have been built and already operating, that you don't have to think about what a mine would look like.
No, it's top 10 in the world today, actually, in terms of producing most of the things that we need. And we're not talking about, it's got a great endowment and, maybe one day, the 4-lane paved highway you take from Astana, get out to Ekibastuz, there's a couple bends there because they got to go around open pits.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Bogatyr coal mine, 5th largest, as you say, coal mine in the world, and underpins a lot of power for Kazakhstan. And they, of course, like many places, are in the process of transitioning to gas. And just recently in a referendum in the country, will also now move to nuclear. It makes sense. They're the world's #1 producer of uranium. But Boshakol, 60 kilometers really away from our Elemis project. Modern, large-scale mine. Been there a couple of times. You could pick that mine up and put it anywhere in the world. And full fleet of Caterpillar trucks. And yet, what's differentiating, I think, Kazakhstan, and the reason why you're seeing the majors now that are showing up and having a look and starting to look for opportunities, is the cost structure. Our world today, everywhere, of course, we've seen inflationary pressures, but the mining industry, hasn't been kind of left out of that. It's actually been a big problem. And you look at some of the largest miners in the world, and they've deferred and canceled and not undertaken brownfields expansions right in belts where they've been producing copper for decades because they can't afford to do it. The numbers don't make sense. Yeah. And yet, Boshakol's producing copper for about $1 a pound.
And part of that's linked to 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour power.
And 48 cents a liter diesel, highly skilled workforce, 99% literacy, and in fact, a lot of Kazakhs end up coming and studying in places like Canada, and then are going back. So it's a great, I think, spot to be making discoveries, because when you make discoveries, where we are, we're 250 meters above sea level. There's some of the highest voltage power lines in the world. You've got heavy rail, you've got roads. You don't even really think about infrastructure because you see it when you get there.
So if we can go through some of the levels, one of them is the Tech Alliance. Can you talk about that? Because one thing about Arras, we talked about Kazakhstan, the advantage of Kazakhstan. What's the advantage of Arras? And one that stands out is your holdings.
Yeah, so a big part of the strategy for us is we're focused in one area. Big country. I think junior companies can often get themselves into trouble with regards to not focusing. And in a country like Kazakhstan, you could be zipping all over the place and really not getting much work done because you're spending a lot of time a little bit here, a little bit there. And so for us, it was a strategy, and Tim really drove this, is looking at this copper belt that largely had been underexplored or unexplored for 30 years since the Soviet Union had collapsed. And so for us, we got into that part of the world, northeastern part of Kazakhstan, and went about kind of assembling a land package, which is the third largest land package in the country, focused on copper behind Rio Tinto and Fortescue. So obviously punching above our weight in that space. And I think what was attracted, Tech was, firstly, there was some relationships, between management and Tech in the past. I knew a number of people there historically, and I think our ability to come in and get a pretty significant land package and then get to work, right? Getting permits, getting approvals, getting on the ground, starting to work up targets, and so Tech stepped forward and made a strategic investment. They hold about 9.4% right now. And then it was 13 months ago when we announced an agreement with them where an exploration alliance covering 2024 and 2025, so we're kind of halfway through it, we're just coming into the second year, where they're funding US $5 million across a portion of the land package. Really, it's a generative alliance. And by the end of next year, and end of this year, I should say, now that we're in 2025, they will then have an opportunity to select up to 4 projects. Smaller projects, there's about 1,900 square kilometers that are in this alliance, and then they'll have the opportunity to select up to 4 projects that are 120 square kilometers each, then start earning equity by spending $47.5 million per project.
So in addition to the Tech Alliance, which you're working on now, and you're generating a lot of targets with soils and your GTK shallow drilling.
And also geophysics as well.
Geophysics as well. On trend to known mines.
Yep.
Some
operating mines as well. Yep.
Mines. You've got your 100% ground. So your 100% ground, you recently released the first holes on the Elemis prospect. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so at Elemis, that's right. So that's not part of the alliance. We control that 100%, and that's really part of the overall strategy. I think, for a company our size, one of the key things we're focused on is trying to remain a tight share structure. We're all big shareholders. We've all invested, and it's been a tough, market for juniors. And so for us, it made sense to bring in a partner such as Tech, someone we really I've got a great relationship with. I've got a great long track record working with juniors. And so that's taken away some of the heavy lifting or the financing risk around, part of the package. But we also equally want to make new discoveries ourselves. And so Elemis was a little bit more advanced. It did, in fact, has had some historic drilling over the last 15 to 20 years. There was some drilling that was done there in particular areas. And we know there was also work that was done by the Soviets, but you don't always get access to that sort of data. And so for us, definitely the soil work that we did in 2023 and announced in early 2024.
This is the 9-kilometer soil trend.
At Bereski, yeah. So, demonstrating that there was, as you said, for almost 9 kilometers, there was a copper and soil anomaly that obviously hung together quite well. And that created quite a bit of interest, I think, not only from groups like Tech, but other majors, to see that sort of size of anomaly that's been identified. We did re-assay some of the historic holes at Bereski East and also in Bereski North and put those out in January of last year as well. But then after doing some ground IP this summer, then set about an initial phase 1 program, testing a number of different targets, largely overprinting the geochem along with the geophysics. And we put the first 3 holes out in that southern part of the Bereski trend on Wednesday.
Right. Well, the market reaction was excellent. You traded about 30 times your average volume. So people are actually taking note.
Which is nice. Yeah, it's nice to see that when you're
more
doing
than
things
nice.
that you think are good, that at least there's more than just you and I watching it.
Yeah, and they're not selling it either. Okay, so looking forward, we should be getting more drill results from your 100% ground at Elmas.
Yeah, so there's another 8 holes from the phase 1 program that, everything going well, I would expect we'll have out over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And then at that point, we'll pause and look and see what's in those results, compared to the first 3 holes as well, and figure out which targets we think we should be focusing on for phase 2 in 2025.
But there are separate targets on the anomaly that have not been drill tested that you would probably hit regardless of what you get in this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's right, because I think what we've come up with now in the southern part at Bresky Central, there's plenty for us to start focusing on and start looking at. But we're spread out. These targets are probably across a 6-kilometer area. You can hide a lot of things in 6 kilometers.
Yeah.
And so, we're looking forward to seeing what comes back. And ultimately, I think then we're going to have to start to move to more of a strategic, maybe some fence lines of drilling in areas that are interested, and we can really start to come back and compare what's down there. And then the other thing, of course, that we're super excited about and just working through right now with our partner Teck on this alliance area is taking all the work that was done last year, and we put out a release in November that talked about some of the targets that are emerging. Quite honestly, Joe, I think if we were having this discussion 12 months ago, we wouldn't be able to point to these. And so this is really the intense work that the team did last year, really driving a lot of data. And so we're sitting down with Teck and we'll be prioritizing those. And I think in 2025, we'll be drill testing a number of those as well, which any one of those.
So a release based on the targets, is that a Q1 thing or?
We'll have to discuss that with Teck, I think as well. We also want to be fairly strategic because there's no doubt, it's going to be a busier place. We know there's other groups that are in the area that are watching what we're doing. I'm sure they'll be watching this interview as well. So, but I think absolutely, I think that the takeaway is that we're going to be drill testing a number of new targets, most of which have never been drilled before. Ultimately, I think, for Teck, they're going to be keen to see what comes out of that and whether or not they use that as a basis to select a project or two to advance on their own and start earning equity as we go 2026 onwards. The remainder of things that aren't selected by Teck then come back to us, and then then we have the opportunity to determine as to whether or not we want to keep them, move them ahead ourselves. We've got other groups that are contacting us as well.
Do they have any first right of refusal on the 100% ground if you ever do a deal?
With regards to LMS, for example, if we wanted to look for a partner, we'd be obligated to talk to Teck first, as long as there's some sort of current agreement in place.
Deal was as good as a deal that somebody else.
Well, it would hinge on the fact that as long as there's a relationship between Teck and Arras. So, say for example, 2026, they've got a project that they're advancing on their own. Then yes, we'd be obligated to talk to them first about terms. But at the end of the day, if terms are better with another group, then we'd be open to go that direction as well. But at this point, our intention and what our shareholders want us to do is to keep moving ahead with LMS. And I think this is a good balance. Some ground we've got a partnership on. We'll see what happens in 12 months. But for stuff that we think we can move along like LMS, we're going to keep doing it ourselves.
Great. Thank you very much, Darren.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's Darren Klinck, president of Arras Minerals in Kazakhstan, grassroots exploration for copper and gold in one of the largest countries in the world. It's Joe Mazumdar, Exploration Insights at the Metals Investment Forum, January 2025 edition. Thanks for listening.